All right, we're back on Telegram. Let's see, are we back on? Looks like we are booting back up on YouTube. Let's see. All right, YouTube, we are coming back. I'm just getting us reset. Sorry about the technical difficulties, my friends. Feds in the A10 mini switcher today that caused a catastrophic failure all over the place. But we are getting back in business. We still have business to attend to. And let's get the screen all situated. Normally I do this before the stream, so I don't have to waste your guys' time with it, but I apologize that we had a little bit of a snafu there. All right, so we've got most of the things queued back up, I do believe. And I don't even know where we were when I noticed that the whole thing stopped working. But all Rumble's back up. Tremendous, tremendous. That's good. All right, so we're back in business on the tubes. We're back in business all everywhere else. Okay, I don't know where we left off, so we're not going to go into... Do we do Field of Greens yet? I don't think we did Field of Greens. Do we do Field of Greens? I don't think so. All right. So let's just say hello to our friends over at fieldofgreens.com. Then we're going to get right into the meat and potatoes. We all want to lose those leftover pandemic pounds, don't we? But how sick are you of all the ads for the weight loss pills and the fad diets? You know, we've all been there. We've all done that, and they just don't work. But you know what does? Eating 5 healthy servings of fruits and vegetables every day. You do that, the weight would probably just fall right off. But I know fruit, not a fan, and vegetables. Who's got time to prepare that every day? I don't. Instead, let's talk about Field of Greens. Now, Field of Greens is a science-backed formula. Specific fruits and vegetables that you're not going to have in any other product. Proper nutrition reboots your metabolism so you burn calories faster and lose weight a healthier way. And Field of Greens is the only brand backed by a better health promise. Yes, you're going to look and feel healthier fast, but the greater proof is going to come at your next checkup when your doctor says, woo, woo, you've lost weight. Whatever you're doing, keep it up. And so let's get you started. Head on over to fieldofgreens.com. Don't forget to enter in code Robert when you check out. That way you can save 15% off at checkout with code Robert. And let's not forget, my friends, the vegetables want to be eaten. And looks like we're back in business. All right, good. So the stream is firing up all across the fruited plains. All right. See, man, sometimes the tubes, they want to interfere with the business that we've got to attend to, but we're not going to let it happen, dang it. All right. So we're back. Let's get to it, my friends. Jack Smith in the special counsel's office object. They're not happy that Donald Trump has filed a request for Judge Chutkan to recuse herself from this entire case. We know we've seen some bizarre rulings from Judge Chutkan this far. She has already said that Donald Trump doesn't really need to review all of the evidence, 10 million pages of documents, give or take. It's like, light reading on a weekend. And she's made the trial happen in March of 2024, right before Super Tuesday. And the whole thing, of course, is political and partisan, and it is being prosecuted by Jack Smith. And so Trump's lawyers submitted a response, a request asking Judge Chutkan to get off the case. It's only 9 pages. And it's mostly Judge Chutkan's own words. We've done another video on this, doing a deep dive of the entire motion. But we have the response from the special counsel's office, which is 20 pages. Okay, so they're a lot more agitated about this than Trump is. He just says, Judge, you made some bad statements historically. Jack Smith's team and Molly, they're out there really pounding the table on this thing, very excited because they want to keep this judge. So it's almost like, why are you protesting too much? Why don't you just let the judge make the opinion on her own? But let's go through both of these. We'll do a quick refresher on what Trump asked for, and then we can see what the government said in response. This one was 9 pages, and we did a deep dive on this, but let me just give you the highlights here. They say, our justice system needs to be fair. Judge Chutkan, in other cases, has suggested that President Trump should be prosecuted and imprisoned. Okay, that's the issue. Other cases, she was making comments about Trump, and Trump's case was not before her at the time. Now it is. So now we know that now this case is showing up in front of her, in front of a person who is already prejudiced against this because she's already made comments about Trump. She's not a fair and neutral person. Now, she may genuinely intend to give Trump a fair trial and think that she can, but the public thinks otherwise. Regardless of the outcome, her public statements are tainting these proceedings. And they're pointing this out literally with her own words, okay? So it's 9 pages, and this block is hers, and this prior block is hers. She was sentencing this woman named Christine Priola and says, this was nothing less, this was Judge Chutkan speaking, this was Judge Chutkan saying, this was nothing less than an attempt to violently overthrow the government. The legally, lawfully, peacefully elected government who were mad that their guy lost, talking about Trump. And the people who were there, who mobbed the Capitol, were there in loyalty and fealty, she says, to one man, Trump. And she said it's blind loyalty to one person who, by the way, remains free to this day. Okay, lamenting the fact that Trump is free. Trump's case is not before her. Well, it is now. But before the case was before her, before she had the opportunity to weigh the evidence fairly because she'd be seeing it for the first time, she's already come to a conclusion. How can Trump possibly be free? They also point out her other statements. When they were sentencing this guy, his name is Palmer. The judge said to Mr. Palmer, you made a good point. You know, that the people who exhorted you and encouraged you and rallied you to go and take action and to fight, they have not been charged. And at the time, Donald Trump had not been charged for this. That is not this court's position. I don't charge anybody. I don't negotiate plea offers. I don't make charging decisions. I sentence people who have pleaded guilty or been convicted. The issue of who has or who has not been charged is not before me. I don't have any influence on that. I have my opinions, but they are not relevant. So it is very clear that she's got an opinion about this. She says it herself. I have my opinions. Yeah, we know you do. And she's lamenting the fact that the people who have exhorted him, the people who in another statement she says were there attacking in fealty, in loyalty to one man, it's Trump. So in making these statements, Trump's defense says, this is obviously not good, Chutkan agreed with portion of his sentencing memorandum and wrongly placed blame on President Trump. And she's made that statement a number of times. Okay, so this is the rest of the argument. They say the Fifth Circuit has said that you need to show that there is absolute impartiality. Therefore, to preserve the reality and even the appearance of impartiality, a judge should recuse herself when there might reasonably be questions about her impartiality. That's the standard. We don't have to show actual bias, that she's actually biased, or that she will be biased. We don't have to prove that. That's a very high, difficult, impossible standard. Instead, is it whether it might reasonably be questioned? And we've got a couple examples of that there. So they have a brief bit of argument. Her statement saying it's blind loyalty to one person who remains free means that she's suggesting that Trump is the person responsible and that she would have an opinion about him being incarcerated. The statements were made on the record in her courtroom supporting incarceration. And the public must understand that her core views are unlikely to change. And this was not an issue in front of her courtroom. Trump's case was not before her. So she's supposed to be fair and impartial. For the foregoing reasons, Trump's defense says Chutkan should recuse herself from the case. And she gets the motion, so it's going to land in front of her. She's going to make the decision. And reassign it to another district judge randomly. That will allow us to ensure this whole thing is fair. All right? Very brief recap of the entire filing. Now, Jack Smith responded to this, and this was only 9 pages, mind you. And again, most of this was Chutkan's own words and argument around it. So Jack Smith now issued a response. And look at this one. It's 20 pages, man. Very upset about it, wanting to make sure they make a point. And here, this one, who wrote this one? Oh, it's Molly Gaston. Exactly what we expected. Now, Molly, here, she's responsible for the sticky notes and the highlighters, and her discovery files were very organized. And also, she laid out a roadmap for the defense on how the government intends to prove their case against their client or whatever. Ridiculous. So Molly is here, and Jack Smith is the office that they're out of. But of course, Jack Smith doesn't really do much of the work here. They just pass it off to Molly. And this is what the motion says. All right, this is the government's response to Trump's request for recusal. We love Judge Chutkan. They say, Your Honor, and again, Judge Chutkan is going to be reading this. So she's like, okay, well, and think about how this works, by the way, how ridiculous this is. So in order to get the judge off your case, you got to submit a motion to the judge telling the judge that you're a bad judge and convince the bad judge that they're a bad partisan hack judge, and then get them to boot themselves off the case. How's that going to help you as the case moves forward when that partisan corrupt hack judge doesn't boot themselves off the case? Government says, Your Honor, Chutkan, there is no valid basis under the law for Chutkan to disqualify herself. In service of this motion seeking the court's recusal, Trump takes out of context the court's words from prior judicial proceedings and misstates the law, the standard about what justifies a recusal. They say to support his claim, Donald Trump cherry picks from portions of the court's sentencings. Did that look like a cherry pick to you? It was like a full paragraph. Both of those were full paragraphs. Here's one right here. Actually, that's the law. Here's one statement. Is that a cherry pick? It's got a full paragraph as far as I can tell. Here's another one. One sentence, two sentences, three. Yeah, like 3, 4, 5 sentences. It's a full paragraph. All right, let's see what else they say. Says that they cherry pick from portions of the court's sentencings for 2 individuals on J6 crimes. In both instances, the court was responding to and ultimately rejecting a common argument raised by the J6 offenders that they deserved leniency because their actions were inspired by or were not as serious as those who contributed to the riot, who had not been held responsible, including Trump. So she's kind of admitting. The court statements addressing the mitigation argument were factually accurate, responsive to the arguments, and evidenced no improper bias or prejudgment of the current case, which I'm not real sure how she gets there when she just admits that she's saying those were others who contributed to it. And the judge literally was like passing. She says, yes, I agree with you. Like, yeah, the argument is Donald Trump should be here. He's not. I think the judge is saying, I think he should. That is literally what the argument is that they're saying she's biased over. Anyways, in addition, Trump's attempt to apply the wrong standard, and again, the standard we just read through was the one where it said, if a reasonable person might believe that the judge is not impartial, might believe, to a reasonable observer, not actually biased, not will be biased, not could be biased, but might. Whereas here, a recusal motion is based on statements made by a judge during the proceedings in response to facts before her. Recusal is only warranted in the rarest of circumstances, where the statements display a deep-seated favoritism. They're quoting from the Supreme Court here, 1994 case, where Judge Chutkan's statements, where they would have displayed a deep-seated favoritism or antagonism that would make fair judgment impossible. The challenge statements, they're saying, that Chutkan said fall short. It needs to be much more than might reasonably. You see how this works in the law, right? The defense had a statement. They said, here's the standard. Might reasonably believe that they're not impartial. This is saying, no. The rule is it has to be deep-seated favoritism and antagonism that would make judgment impossible, fair judgment impossible, which I think obviously makes the cut right here. I mean, I basically would, under that standard, I would even say every single DC judge should probably recuse themselves from the January 6 cases, because they're all talking about this like it's the end of the country, which is just nuts. And while the defendants here, Trump, while he seeks to avoid that standard, there's no basis for that. And because he fails to establish any bias by the court, much less the deep-seated antagonism required for the recusal, says Molly, the court has a duty to continue overseeing this proceeding, and Trump's motion should be denied. They say Trump fails to mention that there is a presumption against recusal, or set forth the legal standard or acknowledge the heightened standard here. The reason for their omission is clear. They know that Trump can't meet the standard, so that's why he's not talking about him. But we want to tell you about the standards, Judge. And you can see, anytime we see a lot of these quotes and all of these italicized cases, we kind of fast forward through it. And a lot of the time, you'll see this in these court proceedings, in these memos or these motions. We'll see big blankets of case law. We call this the rules section, where they're articulating what the rules are. So they say the question under Section 455 is whether a judge's impartiality, here Chutkan's, might reasonably be questioned, which is assessed from the perspective of a third-party observer who understands all the facts and has examined the law. Here, Trump's sole ground for recusal in this case are from statements made during formal court proceedings in her courtroom. There's a higher standard when it comes from her courtroom. The higher standard applies here when they were made in separate proceedings. And she gives us a bunch more rules. Gosh, no wonder this motion is so long. Given the demanding standard for recusal, a judge's in-court statement based on courtroom proceedings almost never give rise to recusal, right? And I would probably agree with that, right? Like, recusal is a high standard, no doubt. But this is a historic case, as they tell us, so probably needs to happen. Rather, cases where courts have granted recusal motions tend to involve singular and startling facts. She continues here, and finally some argument. Says, we're on page 8 already, good Lord. Argument. In 2 of the dozen January 6 related sentencings that Chutkan presided over, the defendants tried to point their fingers at others, including Trump, to say, give me a better deal. Pointed it at Trump and give me a better outcome. The court responded to these arguments as required and rejected them. Now, Trump seeks recusal for the statements when she was just doing her job, claiming that the disqualifying statements impact her impartiality. Prosecutor says they don't do any such thing. Look at the objective nature at them. Because Trump falls short of demonstrating his burden, it should be denied. They say Trump took the statements out of context. Chutkan's statements about which Trump complains came from the performance of her duties. The motion omits important context. First, it's important to understand, they say, that this happened after the attack on the Capitol. Okay, thanks for telling us that. The court, like all the courts, presided over dozens of cases, and like all the other courts, they gained knowledge about the events. The court learned about numerous individuals. They all tried to spread their blame, blah, blah, blah. The court regularly heard variations of the arguments in the form of sentencing, and similar claims were made by defendants in their arguments. Okay, so we know they're pointing the finger at each other. It was with this background, which again, I don't know what adds anything to anything, that the court conducted the 2 sentencing hearings. In both instances, the comments that Trump complains about were not focused on defendant Trump, but instead addressed mitigation arguments brought by them before the court. As such, the court's comments are taken properly in context rather than a hypersensitive, cynical, and suspicious way. All right. So she's saying, okay, they kind of do talk about Trump maybe, but they're just, give her the benefit of the doubt, in other words. They evince no bias against defendant. I think she's really grasping here. In fact, the court statements reveal that when the individuals being sentenced attempted to mitigate by assigning blame to Trump, they rejected the argument and responded it had no bearing on those cases. So the judge did say that no, just because Trump did it doesn't mean that you get, she didn't let them point the fingers at Trump. That's true. But she still blamed Trump for it all, which is what evidences her bias. Furthermore, as set below, prosecutor says, the court made the statements at issue in the course of the court's performance and included them during her sentencing, which again, that's fine, but you can still extract bias from those statements. They're not like protect. She can't just say whatever she wants because they're enveloped in a sentencing proceeding or in her courtroom. It's like protected by this force field against bias. She can say whatever she wants. No, this individualized assessment must include consideration of the arguments made by the parties. And here, she's actually adding some meat to the other comments. She says, when Judge Chutkan was sentencing Palmer, he was attending Trump's remarks at the Ellipse, wearing a Florida hat for Trump, threw a wooden plank at police officers, all the things. In the sentencing memo, they argued that it should be a mitigating factor that other people that created a lot of this will never be held accountable. And the judge made a statement here. Let's read what she says. The court first summarized Palmer's argument. She said, the judge was saying this during the sentencing. Chutkan, in support of the downward variance, Palmer refers to these factors. He said that he was motivated to go to the Capitol because of the former president, that's Trump, who had convinced him the election had been stolen and that his presence was needed. He argues that his presence at the Capitol was a result of his desire to act patriotically and that he regrets all of this, and that the purported architects of the riots have not been charged, and that this is an imbalance to sentence him. He goes to prison while everybody else goes free. After the summary, the court explained why this did not warrant a downward variance. She says, well, it's true, Mr. Palmer, you've made a good point, one that has been raised before. But that is not this court's position. I don't charge anybody. I don't negotiate plea offers. I don't make decisions. I sentence people. The issue of who or has not been charged is not in front of me. I have my opinions, exactly, right? She wants Trump charged, but they are not relevant. And you're correct in that no one who is encouraging anybody to take the Capitol has been charged as of yet. And I don't think that fact means you should get a lower sentence. The fact is, there are a lot of people who agreed with you, who didn't like the results of the election, and who thought it was stolen. They stayed home. You decided on your own free will to leave Florida, come to Washington, and go. That's your right. You're not being sentenced for your views. Right. Yeah, right. When you left the rally and went to the Capitol, you saw what was going on. You engaged in combat. That's why you're being punished. So you have a point that the people who may be the people who planned this and funded it and encouraged and haven't been charged, but that's not a reason for you to get a lower sentence. The court then sentenced him to 63 months. Of course she did. In the recusal motion, Trump seizes upon the statements in this ordinary thing and tries to cast them in a sinister light. In particular, they say, you made a very good point. The people who exhorted you and encouraged you and rallied you and to take action and to fight have not been charged. And then she did say that, which I don't think that they included in here. There it is. I skipped it. Yeah. You made a very good point. The people exhorted you, encouraged you, rallied you to go, to take action and to fight, which is literally the word that Trump used, right? Fight like hell. That's what they all had a meltdown over. They have not been charged, right? That's the Trump word. So, but that they say that was minimized because later on she said, well, I have my opinions, but they're not relevant. So I guess that inoculates the prior statement. So they say there is no basis for Chutkan's assertion of bias. Taken in proper context, the court made factually and legally accurate statements to other people who had been sentenced. The court's comments simply demonstrate the court is doing its job. And it took pains to emphasize that we don't make charging decisions and we don't have influence on those decisions. Yes, but she's making that point, not as like an instructive thing, okay? She's not saying, well, I am a judge, and just so we're clear, like this is a civics class, and the court doesn't have charging capabilities because that's what the government prosecutors have. She's telling him, yes, I know they haven't been charged. I can't control that. If I had my way, they'd be standing right there next to you. So don't tell me that, it's justification as to why she's not giving him a lower penalty. She's basically saying, I would give him the same penalty as you or something harsher. Doesn't change your situation at all. So don't bring that up as though it's a variable. So they do the same thing. They go through the Priola sentencing. They say she also went into the Capitol. They tell us what happened there. In her sentencing memo, she laid the groundwork. She tried to spread the blame over to Trump as well. At her sentencing hearing, Priola also explained certain politicians or groups have taken over things that they weren't supposed to. And they tried to blame others and spread the blame around, calling it her being wrapped up in her emotions. And the court again responded, as required, they say, by binding precedent, addressed a request for leniency, and said it's correct that you don't have any background of criminal activity, but this was an attempt to violently overthrow the government, the legally, lawfully, peacefully elected government by individuals who were mad that their guy lost, Trump. I see the videotape, she says. I see the footage and the signs, people wearing the garb, and the people who mobbed the Capitol that were in fealty and loyalty to one man, not the Constitution. Like, just ask yourself, if you're a reasonable person, do you think this woman might be biased in this case based off this statement alone? Of which most of the people who've come before me seem woefully ignorant of the Constitution. Like, she doesn't understand the Constitution, like due process and the right to the presumption of innocence and the right to review your evidence before you go to trial on it. But okay, yeah, we're ignorant. Got it. Not to the ideals of this country, not to the principles of democracy, right? Like prosecuting your political opponents, which is now happening in her own courtroom. It's blind loyalty to one person who, by the way, remains free to this day. This is a big complaint from her. Crying all over the place. Right. They put this stuff on their highlight reel. There is no mob without the members of the mob, as I've said before. And so you, Priola, made a point saying if we were to take your participation out of the group, everything would have still happened. Your actions did not contribute, but they did contribute because you were there. So with respect to this sentencing, the defense points to that statement and says, yeah, that might make her biased, might mean that she's biased to an independent observer. But they say, no, it's uncontested and accurate fact in response to a sentencing. And so the judge has a responsibility to comment on these things. And so the court gave her a sentence as is appropriate. They say also that Trump fails to meet his burden, that there is not a deep-seated favoritism or antagonism there, which of course we just read those statements. You can be the judge of that. They cite some law. They say Trump cannot point to any statements expressing actual bias, which I don't think he's saying that. And by the way, that's not even what their own standard admits to. Like, where did this change just happen? You see how this works? Do we skip something here? Actual bias. When did the standard turn to actual bias? All this says is that this is the rule that she just cited. Display a deep-seated favoritism and antagonism that would make fair judgment impossible. It doesn't say actual bias. That's not the standard. That's from a Supreme Court case. Then it just modifies. Trump can't prove actual bias. He never tried to prove. He never said said that. All he can say, and he said it repeatedly, is that the court's comments suggest some sort of bias or prejudice. That's right, they do. That's the standard that he's applying. Tellingly, they don't cite a single case in which recusal has been warranted on remotely similar facts. What do you mean? Like another January 6th? You guys say it was the worst attack since the Civil War. We don't have many of those. There aren't any similar cases. Instead, he quotes general legal propositions from other cases. One involves the denial of another recusal motion for some other case, and here's some other, cases. Saying Trump only cites one case in which a court found recusal that was warranted, but that case undermines his position rather than supports his position. Here, the two statements, unlike that other case, here they were factually accurate intrajudicial statements made in the course of sentencing proceedings, which I think is also a lie. I mean, we just read, we'll take a look at her statements again. And neither of them evince bias, really, much less deep-seated antagonism necessary to justify recusal. Let's look at her statements. So she says all of those statements are just facts. The people who mobbed the cap, so she just says all of this is just factual. Yeah. And that they're woefully ignorant and they don't understand the ideals of the country. and they don't understand the principles of democracy. She says it's a fact that it's blind loyalty to one person who remains free. That's a fact. That's not a biased statement. It's blind loyalty to one person who, by the way, remains free to this day, which is different than like, I thought a fact would be like, a water molecule is 2 hydrogen atoms and 1 oxygen atom. Like that's like a fact, right? Is that right? And it's something that you can prove. It's not biased. It's not it's not subject to being conjugated with emotions attached to it. I saw footage of the flags and signs. That might be a fact that she saw footage. But any of this other, like this is opinion. The people who mobbed the Capitol were there in fealty and loyalty to one man. Do you think that's true? Do you think every person who was there protesting at the Capitol was only there because of Donald Trump? Or do you think it was bigger than Donald Trump? Maybe it was about values and the Constitution and fair elections and free speech and the right to assemble and all of these other things. So I would dispute that fact. But of course, this is Molly from the DOJ writing, and they have a hard time with facts. They just make them up everywhere you turn. They just create them out of thin air and just say science or whatever. So that is what her statement is. It evinces no bias at all, and her statements were just literally factually accurate. Right, no bias. So in conclusion, Molly says the defendant, Trump, has failed to identify anything at all approaching clear and convincing evidence necessary to overcome the presumption of impartiality. Instead, Trump has relied on suggestion and innuendo, including paragraphs of her own statement, to insinuate something sinister in the court simply by doing its job. The court comments, when viewed in context by a fully informed third-party observer, do not remotely display a deep-seated favoritism or antagonism that would make fair judgment impossible. I think this case has already been rigged, given the fact that we've got a trial on 10 million documents next year. The court thus has a duty to not recuse itself from the case and should deny Trump's motion. Man, me think the lady doth protest too much. I mean, gosh, Molly spends 20 pages on this, and she's really twisted herself into a pretzel to say that those are factual statements. Does she understand what the word fact means? Don't think so. And it is a lot for them to really cheerlead for the judge. I mean, look, if the Justice Department is only interested in pursuing justice, well, shouldn't they just let the justice system handle itself? Do they need to be cheerleaders for the judge? Or shouldn't the judge just be this already unbiased judge? And they don't have to defend her, but they're explaining her words. They're over-explaining, right? If you ever catch yourself having to explain, no, I did do the thing I told you I didn't do, but I did do the thing, right? You're busted on this. If you got to explain it too much, you're busted. They're busted. This judge is biased. They know she's biased. That's why they're scrambling to try to save her bad statements. Now, the problem with this is that Chutkan is going to review this motion, and of course, she's going to say she's not biased and reject this and continue to preside over it and consult your local appellate lawyer, but I don't think there's much they can do about that. I mean, of course, you can always attempt to file an interlocutory appeal, but I'm pretty sure both sides have to certify that. The judge would have to certify it, as would the Court of Appeals, and so that would mean that this would be something that would be appealable at the end of the trial. Now, this is all new and novel stuff, so my friends, always keep that in mind. There's always room for deviations on this. We'll see what happens here. I'm sure we're going to enjoy Chutkan's response, and we'll see whether she recuses herself or not. Let me know what you think about that as we continue to cover. Thank you for subscribing and joining as we do, and we'll see you on the next one. All right, now, let's change gears, sort of, and talk about Hunter, because his people sent a big letter out there over to Congress, and they're not happy. We got Congress who's going to have to deal with this too. Hunter Biden's lawyers blast Congress. We know that Congress, James Comer, Jim Jordan, and Jason Smith from the House Ways and Means Committee have all sent letters to Hunter and his lawyers demanding access to certain documents. Well, now Hunter's lawyers have responded, and they're not too happy about it. We've got the whistleblowers who are responding to Hunter's lawyers because Hunter's lawyers are calling the whistleblowers not really whistleblowers. Oversight has a response, and the White House has a response to all of this. But we've also got, in reaction to Hunter's lawyer's letter, this clip of the Biden bagman shuffle. You can see there's this interesting exchange happening right here. These two, Biden and this woman, are talking. Hunty and this fella over here, they come to a deal and they just shuffle right out of the way to continue on with their criminality. And we're going to get into that. But first, let's see exactly what the letter looks like. This comes from Hunter's lawyers over to Congress. And you can see it was sent via email to the big three who are now appointed to the impeachment inquiry to investigate the Biden crime family. Here, James Comer, Oversight, shout out. Jim Jordan and Jason Smith, shout out to those three dudes. On September 6th, we saw that there was a request for documents that came from them to Hunter. And this is in response to the request. They say, "I write, Congress punk losers." This is Hunter's lawyer writing. "I write in response to your September letter to me and Christopher Clark, the other lawyer, requesting various documents that were exchanged between our law firms. You said in your letter that this was pursuant to your commitment to impartial justice." Commitment to impartial justice. "For months now, one or more of you or others acting at your behest have done everything you can, Congress, to interfere," listen to this, "interfere with impartial justice, and the proper workings of a criminal investigation involving our client, Robert Hunter Biden. In fact, Chairman Comer, you, on May 22nd, 2023, during an interview on Fox, you actually admitted your real purpose had nothing to do with proper oversight, and your committee's goal was, quote, absolutely to move the needle of political support for the 2024 election." Which I'm all in favor of at this point. It's political blood sport season. Anybody who's still playing this game like anything here is apolitical is like living in fantasy land. It is political blood sport. I hate to say it. I wish it weren't that way, but they started it. So here was the question. In response to a question posed, is this going to move the needle with the media? Which is actually, hang on. Did you move Comer? Has this moved the needle with the media? Comer responds, absolutely. There's no question. You look at the polling, and right now, Donald Trump is 7 points ahead of Joe Biden, trending upward. Biden is trending downward. And I believe that the media is looking around, scratching their head, and they're realizing the American people are keeping up with our investigation. Yeah. Well, it's because it's not necessarily just by his own words. He didn't say anything about the 2024 election in that statement, did he? No, he says that the polls that are related to 2024 might be relevant, but the polls are also relevant to his criminal conduct. So there's a perfectly good explanation for that. And by the way, just as an aside, I'm on team, I don't care if it's political. Impeach for politics. Who cares? They've already done it twice, and then they also indicted him 4 times for pure politics. And I've been saying this, if the Republicans don't play the same game, they're going to come after them too, and their kids. So it's time they start also learning how to do this stuff. So your blatant efforts, this is Hunter's lawyer writing to Congress, and also impartial justice. You hear how now they are concerned about the weaponization of the law. Incredible, right? Your blatant efforts achieved your goal as the U.S. Attorney of Delaware today filed gun charges against our client, which are 0.1% of what the actual charges should be. It's like a speeding ticket when you've driven a bus full of children into the Grand Canyon and everybody's dead. And they're like, you were going a little fast. Don't worry about it. Like, what? Charge it, which is a bad visual. Sorry to those kids in that visual. Charges that are unprecedented when not part of some other criminal conduct and have been found unconstitutional by federal courts of appeals, and who reversed his earlier decision that such charges were not warranted. Your improper interference from Congress now by investigating the Biden DOJ and Biden's corruption with his son is now affecting a federal prosecutor is a much greater threat to society than the 11 days that Mr. Biden possessed an unloaded gun. He's under attack. Hunter's under attack by Congress. And it's a weaponization of the investigation. Well, in this unprecedented display of, partisan congressional manipulation, Your committees have been willing to pretend to provide a forum for real whistleblowers. Huh. He's talking garbage about Gary Shapley and Joseph Ziegler. Both guys who we played a lot from here, who have absolute credibility. They were with the IRS for a long time, and they were literally a part of the investigation, who were investigating Hunter. But he's maligning them, providing a forum for real whistleblowers when your goal was to misuse the process to dump protected tax information onto the public. And they were also threatening the IRS whistleblowers, saying that they should be charged with crimes for blowing the whistle. To give a forum to the so-called agents, this is going to be the word of the year, so-called. Hunter's so-called lawyers, Hunter's so-called prosecutors, and so on. And their representatives to violate federal laws. You even allowed the Oversight Committee to allow Marjorie Taylor Greene to display a naked photo of Hunter. You put Hunter's wee-wee in the congressional record on C-SPAN. Conduct that is wholly inappropriate by a sitting congresswoman. Can you explain how all of this promotes impartial justice? All your efforts to date, as you admitted, well, impartial justice would mean, if they're going to be rummaging around the FBI through Melania's underwear, I guess we could post pictures of Hunter's crack in Congress. This is how it goes. Impartial means everybody gets held to the same standard. So all your efforts to date, writes Hunter's lawyers, as you admitted, were to move forward the convenient for your political purpose but totally dishonest claim that Mr. Biden was treated more favorably than others and that he would get a sweetheart deal. Your most recent letter repeated this false statement in your, quote, serious concerns, questioning whether the department has handled a case involving his son in an impartial manner is consistent with other prosecutions. So there can be no real confusion here. Even though your stated agenda is not as you claim, we actually agree that the department has not handled a case involving the son in an impartial manner. It is not that Biden was given a sweetheart deal. It's just the opposite. Listen to this claim. Mr. Biden was and will be charged for conduct no one else would be charged for because as the president's son, he's been subject to your relentless efforts to inject partisan Republican politics into the process. Hunter is actually a bigger victim. Nobody else would get charged with a gun crime like this. And maybe that's true. And I'm actually in agreement that I would like to see Hunter actually charged with real crimes, right? I think that this is kind of a scam, as we said yesterday. It's like a speeding ticket when you ran a bus full of kids off the Grand Canyon. It's like a joke. And I kind of agree with him. It is kind of a joke here. But that's because it's a joke of a benefit, not because it's a joke that he's a victim. There is mounds of evidence of criminality here. They could charge him. And again, we're not talking about Joe Biden. We're talking about Hunter Biden with other tax crimes, other, prostitution type crimes, other drug crimes, trafficking crimes, whatever. A lot. And the fact that he's got this little stupid gun form crime, one of the charges of which is probably unconstitutional in the first place, it's all a scam. Like, we get it. It's all just a mirage. But he's saying this makes him a victim, right? He's going to reframe this gift as a victim. Ironically, then, your requests actually provide a vehicle to demonstrate the truth, show how completely wrong your claims of preferential treatment have been, and display how differently and unfairly Hunty has been treated. And it's going to expose how your committee has been trying to interfere with the correct outcome, which in their opinion should have been no charges, through a 5-year investigation. Thus, without accepting your premise that any attorney provided any information to the media, they said that Hunter's people were leaking this stuff, we provide you with the following. They're responding to their request for all the things. We provide you with the following. Communications and documents in our possession responsive to your requests. Oh, good. Additional communication between Biden's lawyers and U.S. attorneys in Delaware. Good. Can't wait to see those. Several letters written several, written to the U.S. Attorney's Office about breaches of tax information under the rules of criminal procedure. And in addition to what you requested, a letter to Merrick Garland. We're including a letter from Biden's counsel to the district attorney in Delaware. That letter compiles dozens of improper disclosures by the IRS agents, okay? So this is their, you should charge the whistleblower letter. He's saying, I'm going to send you the, we think you should charge the whistleblower letter to you. If your intent is to honestly ensure impartial justice, we'll be watching and see if you do. You should investigate the misconduct of your own committees. Oh, man. Comer, he's got some letters he's got to respond to. Big Fanny was getting very angry at him, making a lot of noise, making a big stink. And now this guy is doing the same. Knowing with your practice that has been to publicly disclose materials and dump them onto your websites in a self-serving way, which we appreciate. I love the dumps here. We get to review them here on the show. You will no doubt try to spin, explain, or mischaracterize the documents, but any person without a political agenda will see the following. I can't wait until they release these documents. It should be fun. They say, Hunter says, for almost 5 years, Weiss and his staff conducted a wide-ranging investigation, all done to delay this, right? And allow statute of limitations to expire. So who cares how long it took? It should happen quickly. I mean, Trump has been prosecuted very quickly. Why hasn't Hunter been prosecuted for all the different RICO charges that somebody could bring against him and the crime family? Documents subpoenaed or obtained by warrants and individuals interviewed. It was a very broad investigation. As part of the investigation, Biden's lawyers provided extensive material and made several presentations that showed various allegations. Not only was there no evidence of willful tax violations, right? You mean like the willful tax violation, like when he said that his sex club was a business expense? Do you mean that one? The $70,000 a year sex club as a business expense? That's not a willful tax violation? That's interesting. But any questions, some misunderstood and misstated by the so-called whistleblowers, were explained by mistakes. Hunter made a bunch of mistakes. Some years, Biden did not know any taxes because he was already overpaid. And the gun charges have never brought the type of standalone charge being contemplated now. I believe this, actually. This part I believe, right? Okay, just like we saw a garbage, useless plea deal that was never intended to even happen, they would not have even had a plea deal. There was not even a real request for Hunter to plead guilty until the whistleblower started speaking out. Then they had to create the plea deal May 2023. Then they tried to get it through with a broad immunity deal. The judge asked a couple questions, wrecked the whole process, and that was already a scam. Like, remember when we went through that, the judge said, have you ever done this before? They said, no, never, ever, no precedent at all. So of course, why would this also, like if they're going to actually charge Hunter with something, why wouldn't they also charge him with something they've never done before? Something that's a total slap on the wrist, that's basically insane, so they can make all these arguments. And so there's not really any precedent for the penalty or the sentencing and all these things. You just say, Judge, it's like the first time ever he's a victim here. The DOJ charged him with a crime that is mostly meaningless, and they can say it right here. They say it's been brought in other cases for conduct that Hunter has never done, right? And it's all by design to give them this argument to make. The idea to create a non-litigated resolution was made by Weiss's office. So Weiss said we should give you a non-prosecution agreement. We should give you immunity. The same David Weiss who just got promoted, the same guy who botched the deal, just got promoted. And Hunter's team, and I actually probably believe them on this, that the DOJ prompted the non-prosecution agreement, not the defense. Either way, I mean, the DOJ accepted it. Even if you don't believe this is true, they definitely accepted it, and they tried to cram it through with Judge Norica. The change to a rare misdemeanor felony diversion only occurred after a chain of events with improper disclosures arranged by your whistleblowers. So you started interfering with this, and Biden was treated more severely than others after you got involved. And not content with your involvement, you still were involved, and the U.S. attorney reversed his offer and the decision, you continued your barrage. All right, now I think what they're going to say when Hunter challenges, oh man, this is going to be good. I mean, he's got good lawyers, I have to tell you. This is pretty good, aggressive stuff. Congress better wake up because they're working against two people here, Hunter's lawyers and the DOJ, okay? Just because Hunter is being prosecuted by the DOJ, I would not consider that an adversarial relationship at all. So what's going to happen here is the same thing that we saw in the elections. In 2020, we were wondering, why did all of the election rules get changed so quickly? Well, Democrat groups, like brought forward by guys like Mark Elias and the Democracy Docket, filed lawsuits against friendly secretaries of state, Democrats. And then the Democrats said, oh no, let's just negotiate a deal with their so-called lawsuit petitioners, the plaintiffs. They're being sued. Then they came to a deal. It's the same dang thing that's happening here. And now Hunter's lawyers are going to say that we're under attack by Congress, Judge, and that's why you have to allow us to execute this immunity and diversion deal. On July 25th, Chairman Smith even went so far as to write to the federal judge and sent all the documents in, which may or may not have helped blow up the plea deal. And Hunter's lawyers, Abbe, you guys called and tried to get that document off the docket. You guys called and tried to get it removed. Following another statement, you have turned up the political heat on Hunter, resulting in his apparent attempt to prove on Mr. Biden, and now you're bringing charges. The special counsel is now bringing charges after a 5-year investigation because of you. Each of you in Congress seem intent on continuing the pressure by demanding access to all of these documents. And so, as to the last effort now aimed at us, Comer, thank you. You want documents from us? Thank you. You may have not intended it, but your demands provide the appropriate procedure to expose the truth of what happened, I'm sure. The thoroughness of the government's investigation, the lack of any factual or legal basis to support any charges, beyond the failure to timely file misdemeanors that have been agreed upon, the correct non-charging resolution first discussed, the unexpected change brought by the political pressure brought by the U.S. attorney, and now what the special counsel will do to show that he's not buckling to politics. They're going to be able to expose all of it, I'm sure. Signed by Abbe David Lowell over to Congress. So they're just setting this up, right? It's laying the framework. Hunter is under attack now by the DOJ. He's under attack by the Congress. He's such a victim here, even though it's the DOJ in literal cahoots, and they're just framing this to make Congress the bad guys and demand the judge honor the immunity deal because Hunter has been facing political attack, and this needs to just be entered and done. So interesting letter over to Congress. Now, we'll see what they do in response to that. But they keep telling us that there's no real evidence of here, not one iota, no scintilla of evidence, not a shred. And there have been many Democrats who continue to use that stupid phrase. But this came over from Newsmax and Greg Kelly, and they dug this up. And this is an interesting play-by-play of old Joe and Hunter, which tends to show that the whistleblowers, the bank records, the SARs, the text messages, Joe's phone calls, Joe's lunches and golf outings, his recorded video where he says, I withheld the $1 billion. It all makes sense. They've been doing this stuff for years. Here's how it worked. The Biden bagman shuffle.
Political speech in South Carolina. Look who's watching Joe work the room. Joe is schmoozing everybody after the speech. See what we have shaded there? That's Hunter watching every step of the way. Next video, as Joe schmoozes at the right time, Hunter moves in. All right, Hunter moves in as soon as it turns to business. Watch and listen here.
Maybe we can work something out, man.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
Well, Hunter was just telling about his firm in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Do you have a card by any chance?
I do. I don't, but I'll give you my.
Well, let me give you my
Yeah,
card.
and then I'll give them. I gave them all away.
Okay.
Well, that was a wonderful speech.
So then Joe goes right back to schmoozing, and watch the men step away to conduct business separately. You see it? Right there. That's how it worked. That's how it worked. Circumstantial.
Nice job,
but
Greg.
devastating. Joe.
Nice job, Greg. Well done. So I think that is beautiful, right? And you can see it right there. And watch this woman's reaction when he says, yeah, we'll have to work something out, okay? We'll have to work something out. We'll get this all taken care of. Let's work something out. Look at this face right here. Look at that. Look at that face. She goes, huh? What do you mean? We can get that land deal? You're kidding me. I thought that the regulation said we couldn't do that. We'll have to work something out. Huh? Wow. You're telling me you can make the contract go away? She can't even believe it. And now he gets it, okay? This guy gets it right here. This is April 22nd, 2005 from C-SPAN. Yeah, that's what we'll do. We'll just work something out. Here it is.
Moves in. All right, Hunter moves in as soon as it turns to business. Watch and listen here.
Maybe we can work something out, man.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
Well, Hunter was just telling about his firm in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Do you have a card by any chance?
I do. I don't.
No,
I'll give you
no.
my,
Well, let me give you my
yeah,
card.
and then I'll give. I gave them all away.
Gave him all away.
Well, that was a wonderful speech. Yeah.
So then Joe.
Gave them all away. He was out there all night just smoozing around. Here you go. Hey, call me. My daddy. Call me. And they knew exactly what was happening here, right? And then they do the shuffle. Now, I know I don't want to beat this into the ground, but I want to just rise this volume up a little bit. And I want you to see if you can hear this laugh from this guy. Okay, he takes a breath. When Joe Biden says, maybe we can work something out, he goes, yeah, we'll definitely work something out. And he gets it. Yeah, that's what we'll do. Yeah, that's what we'll do. Yeah, that's what we'll do. And his wife's like, holy moly. Jefferson Jackson Day dinner, South Carolina. The volume's going to be a little bit louder, but listen to this guy's breath. You can catch the breath.
Turns to business. Watch and listen here.
Maybe we can work something out, man.
Yeah, that's what we'll do.
Well, Hunter was just telling about his firm in Washington, D.C.
Yeah.
Do you have a card by any chance?
I do. I don't, but I'll give you my.
Well, let me give you my
Yeah,
card.
and then I'll give. I gave them all away.
Well, that was a wonderful speech. Yeah.
So then Joe goes right back to schmoozing and watch the men step away to conduct business separately. You see it? Right there. That's how it worked. Circumstantial, but devastating. Joe.
Beautiful. And I'm right there with Greg Kelly, man. It's almost hysterical. It's exactly what they did. Joe Biden initiated it. Hunter just took the guy and they just stepped right aside, right? That's what they do all the time. It's just amazing. So that's what you got. Now, the Democrats say stuff like that is they're probably going to go out to lunch, talk about the weather, and they're probably going to work on non stuff that's not related to Joe at all. And if Hunter got paid for that, Joe Biden didn't get paid. Joe Biden didn't get a Venmo transaction. There was nothing there. So, curious how that could possibly be a crime. Well, you have to put those together if you're on that side. It's obvious to the rest of us. So the Oversight Committee responded here, and, Abbe and all these people just keep, I think, just trying to gaslight everybody. Here is what Empower.us said. These are the people representing the whistleblowers. And here is what Shapley attorneys say. They say Biden lawyer Abbe is peddling fiction. They say in a desperate attempt to save their client, Hunter, who has been obviously involved in this for years, Hunter's attorneys continue to press a false narrative against two whistleblowers who risk their careers to show government malfeasance in its investigation and prosecution of Biden. Attorneys for the IRS Supervisory Special Agent Gary Shapley made the following comment. They say, these materials show that the president's son repeatedly lobbied the Biden Justice Department to initiate retaliatory prosecutions of our client. Exactly. Whistleblowers made protected disclosures to Congress. It's insane to say this, but the president's son, who has direct access to the president and the entire DOJ, threatened the whistleblowers who were going to a separate branch of government with prosecution, and and Hunter's daddy literally runs the executive branch. It's crazy. Talk about leverage, man. It's like you've got the entire executive branch to make your witnesses go away by threatening them with prosecution. That's exactly what they did, which is why when we say that the IRS whistleblowers and their team are heroes, they are, right? They are facing the entire onslaught of the DOJ, the FBI, who knows who else is involved there from the executive branch. So Hunter's attorneys, they have already made this argument to Judge Norica, who reviewed the whistleblower materials and rejected their baseless allegations, including their claims against grand jury secrecy violations. The whistleblower team says, the taxpayer privacy laws are written by Congress, and it gave itself authority in those laws to hear disclosures about the taxpayer info. Commissioner Werfel has made this all clear to the IRS employees. Whether Congress decides to make that information public is up to them. Mr. Lowell, who wrote the letter, is peddling a fiction that Weiss and his team were always going to let his client off the hook. But the facts are clear that in early 2022, they agreed with investigators that felony tax charges were warranted, and they presented those charges to U.S. attorneys in D.C. and California. So they actually wanted more serious charges at the outset. Okay, David Weiss was the guy who was saying maybe there shouldn't be a full deal, or there should be a deal and no charges, just the diversion deal. His attempt, and this is what caused the whistleblowers to be so agitated about this. His attempt to blame his client's legal troubles on politics is a brazen ploy to deflect from the fact that Biden-appointed prosecutors, whose conflict of interest should have kept them miles away, blocked felony charges against the president's son. And now they're saying he's being overcharged. It was only after hitting those political roadblocks that benefited Hunter Biden that Weiss reversed course, told the investigators he was not the deciding person, and let the felony tax evasion charges in D.C. die, right? Tristan Levitt, Jason Foster, and Mark D. Little, all over at empower.us. So shout out to the whistleblowers and their team. Now, the Oversight Committee also released a short statement on this after they got the letter. They say, IRS whistleblowers Shapley and Ziegler did everything right to obtain protected whistleblower status. Don't threaten them. They provided documents and testimony that showed not just misconduct and politicization within the DOJ, but also evidence that Hunter evaded $8.3 million in taxes. They're incredibly brave for coming forward, and they don't deserve the smear campaign being waged against them by Abbe and the rest of Hunter's legal team. And of course, I agree with that. So the question is, what is the oversight, the judiciary, the Ways and Means Committee going to uncover? The impeachment inquiry moves on. We know we now have a so-called indictment of Hunter Biden. Is Congress going to do anything about it? Well, guys like Ken Buck from Colorado are making it difficult to get anything done, at least on the impeachment front, because they're not interested in looking at reality. And as Big Fanny says, sometimes reality will hit you. But here is what he said on CNN when asked about this by Jake Tapper.
Joining us now to discuss Republican Congressman Ken Buck of the great state of Colorado. Let's start with the Hunter Biden indictment. A lot of your Republican colleagues were critical when David Weiss was named special counsel. James Comer still being critical, basically saying unless, well, I don't want to put words in his mouth, but he wants to see more than Hunter Biden indicted on gun charges. I mean, this would seem to suggest that David Weiss is pretty serious, no?
Yes, and I have to tell you, I remember when Jim Comey announced an investigation of Hillary Clinton, and all the Democrats jumped up and down, and then he said that he was closing it without recommending charges, and all the Republicans jumped up and down. This is the same situation. How silly Republicans are going to look in 6 months if he's brought a gun charge, tax charges, and Foreign Agent Registration Act violation charges. I mean, give the guy some time to develop this case. I don't agree with the plea agreement that he had before.
Wild.
But this certainly looks like he is taking it seriously. And you can't judge him until we've seen the work product.
Oh my gosh, it's such a scam. Okay, this guy is just, I think he's just bought and paid for. He's like a Republican. He's a Democrat in Republican clothing. He makes terrible arguments. He says that David Weiss needs more time to investigate this. It's already been 5 years. FARA and other types of crimes, does he think that they're actually going to look into them? He just says in this same clip that he needs more time to investigate it, but he also disagreed with the plea deal that he offered at the beginning, which was a scam plea deal, obviously, which is why the judge didn't allow it to happen, because it was all rigged. So I don't understand how the same person who had such horrible judgment to allow, talking about David Weiss, to allow a plea deal with Hunter to go into effect that everybody universally panned, that the judge said was basically unconstitutional or illegal, didn't allow to happen. That same guy who did all of that, you now trust to go in and do a proper investigation right now? Are you kidding? How is that reasonable? It's not. It's because they just make stuff up, right? It's obviously lunacy. So that's Ken Buck from Colorado. Hopefully he gets primaried and somebody boots him out of office. But questions about what does the White House say in response to this? Here is what Joe Biden said. Now, of course, his economy continues to fail and falter. The auto industry union workers have now gone on strike. Apparently, they want $300,000 a year, 4-day work weeks, 5 weeks of vacation, and I don't know, probably, well, I don't even want to know what else they want. We'll leave it at that. But they're not working anymore. And here's what Joe Biden says in response. Now, the media, they've got questions about him. Joe, your son has just been indicted. Anything to say about that?
The bottom line is that auto workers help create America's middle class. They deserve a contract
right now
that sustains them in the middle class. So thank you very much. That's all I'm going to say. Thank you.
Mr. President, at what point would you get directly involved in the negotiation? Should Hunter get a pardon?
President Biden with a very brief statement and not taking any questions, although you can imagine there were a lot today. The president said,
yeah, not going to be taking any questions there. A little bit busy. So Karine also was there to take some questions and not provide many answers. Here was the question from the media. Have you even talked to Hunter, or has Joe talked to Hunter? What's up, Karine?
Can you tell us if the president has talked to his son since these charges came down yesterday?
Yeah, there's nothing new here. As I've been asked that question many times, I'm not going to get into private conversations that the president has with his family. I'm just not going to speak to it.
Will those conversations, though, have to change given the high scrutiny of these charges?
I'm just not going to get into private conversations that the president has with his family.
Private conversations, not going to talk about it. Okay, that's fine. How about some other conversations about whether the president might pardon him, since the president does have the pardon power and his son has now been charged with the crime? Joe Biden has said that there was never anything wrong that his son did and that he's the smartest man he knows. So is anything going to happen now that he's been charged? Is a pardon coming?
Second one, will the president pardon or commute his son if he's convicted?
So I've answered this question before. It was asked of me not too long ago, a couple of weeks ago, and I was very clear and I said no.
No, there you go. So that's pretty easy answer. That's kind of the same answer that you'd expect, because they're probably going to come out and do the same thing really that Trump is doing and saying that, why would I need a pardon if I didn't do anything wrong? And I'm curious to see if they're going to start saying that the DOJ is corrupt or something like that to sort of put themselves in a better light. But it's their DOJ, and I think that the DOJ is doing exactly what they want, which is charging him with a stupid little scam charge. So Psaki, who is now getting more airtime out there on MSNBC and elsewhere, she's really explaining what the Democrat take is on this one over on MSNBC and just priming their audience about how this new conversation will go and why it's all about love. And really how this indictment, we know how the 4 indictments are helping Donald Trump because we know they're illegitimate. I think she might be thinking that maybe that same phenomenon will happen for Hunter. The problem with Hunter is that he's a bona fide, bribe-ridden, corrupt crackhead, and there's a ton of evidence to support that. So I'm not so sure that the entire country is going to rally around his mugshot if and when we get one. But you'll see, this is the same conversation that they're having. This is going to be the new, narrative that it's all about love. A lot of people get charged with crimes. A lot of people have drug addictions and so on. And apparently that allows you to be a quid pro quo bagman for your daddy president.
I mean, we have to have a rule of law, Mika and Joe. It's such a relief to hear that from people, including when it's about, as you just said, somebody who is very close to the president. I mean, first and foremost, the politics of this are a little hard to predict. But right now you have the president's son somebody he loves deeply, somebody who has very publicly struggled with drug addiction, now facing these charges, which are serious. And I'll let Andrew do a contemplation of the legality and the process and all of that, which I know a lot of us have questions on. What is tricky to watch here, and what I think we all will be watching, is what do Republicans do with this on the Hill as it relates to their impeachment process baloney efforts, right?
Baloney.
We didn't see a lot of that yesterday, a lot of the tying of these charges to their impeachment efforts. If there are additional charges that we see from the Department of Justice that Andrew just alluded to, I suspect they would try to do that. But right now, what we're looking at, and I think on the politics of this, millions of Americans have dealt with family members who have dealt with drug addiction, who've dealt with alcohol addiction, who have dealt with a range of addiction. My bet is right now this is a heartbroken president in the White House who is worried about his son. And we're all watching to see kind of what happens with this. So, Andrew, my question for you. I was going to ask Andrew, because I'm just curious, because we're all trying to figure this out. What happens exactly next here, right? There's a lot of talk, which is important for all.
All right, so we're going to skip over that one. But Jen, she's right. It's just about love, America. And so if you love your kids, you'll also understand the love that Joe has for his crackhead bagman son. And we probably should look the other way on all of these things. The Republicans are being pretty mean to him, He's a real good guy, smartest man Joe knows, and he's definitely not a criminal. So we'll, of course, continue to cover this. I'm very hopeful that we get a nice letter from James and Jim and from Jason, because they all should be very irritated that Abbe Lowell is talking to them like that. I hope they have a response that is appropriate in return. Of course, we'll continue to cover it, my friends. Be looking forward to seeing you as we do. Thank you for subscribing and hitting that like button wherever you're watching it, and we'll see you on the next one. All right. Now, one final segment on the day, and this guy, oh boy, this one. A GOP lawyer is now fighting to keep Trump off the ballots in 2024, and we knew these attacks were coming from the left. We've already heard pencil neck Schiff talking about it. We've heard guys like Weissmann talking about it. Psaki's been talking about it. They're all very excited about this attack because they can't beat Trump legally at the ballot boxes. They've got to censor him, throw him off the socials. They've got to ban him from being on the ballots. They've got to imprison him if they can do that through 4 indictments, and the list goes on and on. But this guy, Jason Torchinsky, is the man behind some of this effort from the right. And where did he come from? What side of the Republican Party? This is his background from his law firm's website. You can see Holtzman Vogel, Jason Torchinsky. Look at that right there. Government experience, deputy general counsel to Bush Cheney. So, a Bush Cheney lawyer is now working to keep Trump off the ballot. Is anybody surprised at all? Not really. Here's the article from the Washington Post. They tell us that a GOP lawyer with ties to 3 Trump rivals now enters the 14th Amendment game. And this is to keep Trump off of the ballot, saying he is not qualified. Just like if you're not age 35, or you're not a United States citizen, or you're not an insurrectionist, right? Those are the things that might keep you off the ballot. Or if you are an insurrectionist, you can't be on the ballot. And they're saying this 14th Amendment just was newly discovered. It's a self-executing feature, and they're going to use it to keep Trump off. The attorney represents a private individual, not any of the campaigns, and he's exploring this issue. This is the guy who is behind it. Jason Torchinsky is a partner with Holtzman Vogel. In recent days, initiated conversations about the idea of trying to disqualify Trump with a range of figures: a Democrat Secretary of State, fellow election lawyers, a retired federal judge, might be Judge Ludwig, according to multiple people familiar with the calls who spoke on condition of anonymity. The lawyer's involvement reflects the latest escalation in an emerging fight. The tussle has provided surprising alliances. Torchinsky's firm has done legal work for Chris Christie and Vivek, as well as Never Back Down and Ron DeSantis. Torchinsky is a longtime GOP election lawyer, also represented the RNC, is researching the issue not for Trump's rival, but for Jacob Harriman, the founder of a nonpartisan service organization called More Perfect Union. So we know it's probably not a nonpartisan organization. It is critical, they say, to understand if there's a legitimate risk of nominating a candidate who could be deemed ineligible for office, right? That's going to be their thing. We got to figure it out now because Trump might be booted off the ballot later. The push to disqualify Trump adds to the already complicated web of battles, which is part of the process. If Trump is bogged down in dozens of lawsuits around the country, let's say, I don't know, maybe more than that, maybe hundreds of lawsuits, maybe 1 or 2 lawsuits in every state or half the states, right? That's a lot. And he would then have to defend those lawsuits. And that's going to bog down his campaign funds and his human capital. I mean, it's a real big onslaught. One federal and one Georgia case accused the president of trying to overturn the 2020 election. And another federal case is a classified documents case, all which complicate these things. Advocacy groups and voters in at least a dozen states have filed or explored filing lawsuits that get Trump off the ballots. Lawyers on both sides have predicted the dispute probably going to go up to the Supreme Court. I would agree with that. On Tuesday, a liberal group filed in Minnesota. 2 attempted challenges in Florida already been thrown out. We read through one of those here. In Colorado last week, they may fare better. We read through that lawsuit too, and that was a much better lawsuit. They're doing drafts of these, okay? First draft, second draft, third draft. Every one of them is a shot on goal. In a sign of further escalation of the debate, the Trump campaign sent a letter to the Secretary of State, David Scanlon of New Hampshire, signed by scorers saying, don't you dare remove Trump from the ballot. There's no basis in the law. So Trump's people are also responding on this one now. The Trump campaign on Tuesday sent a letter. There are very serious legal scholars on both sides who hold opposing understandings of this provision. It's such a joke. It's notable that more people died and many more were injured as a result of January 6th than died or suffered, look at this, than died or suffered as a result of the attack on Fort Sumter. Can you believe this? So they are actually comparing this to the Civil War. Oh my gosh. William Baud of the University of Chicago, who is teaching students there? That's incredible. And Michael Stokes. They said the opening battle of the Civil War at Fort Sumter, nobody died there, or fewer people died. And they shot Ashley Babbitt, who was unarmed, and Roseanne Boylan was probably beaten to death. And other 2 people died of heart problems. And it was Brian Sicknick, who they threw a fit about, who died of natural causes, not of the riot. The next day, retired federal judge Michael Luttig, together with liberal legal scholar Lawrence Tribe, highlighted their arguments. And they're saying, they're going to say that it was, first of all, worse than the Civil War, and that it was actually already decided upon by Congress. Congress already impeached him. Okay, so that's one decision. And Congress voted by a simple majority to convict him, but not enough to sustain the actual conviction. Okay, so even though he was not removed by a 2/3 majority, he still had the majority of senators vote to convict, which means that is a congressional finding. Okay, that's what they're going to use to mash together. So Judge Luttig, that guy who is one of the most painful people to listen to on the planet, said in an exchange that he has been talking to Torchinsky. Trump and his allies are vociferously defending this. Ramaswamy said that a lawyer serves as general counsel for the campaign, but that person has absolutely no involvement with this 14th Amendment stuff. So Ramaswamy's disavowing. Christie says has nothing to do with any of it as well. Christie's disavowing. Nothing to do with any of it. Vehemently disagrees. Did DeSantis disavow? Some Trump detractors also opposed the use of the 14th Amendment, saying it could backfire. Yeah, it's political malpractice and it won't succeed. It violates the principle that the voters should decide, but they don't want the voters to decide. Jocelyn Benson from Michigan, who helped rig that one last time, was among those contacted by Torchinsky. He said, yeah, my office has received a number of calls, emails, and letters. This issue is something that needs resolution. The Supreme Court should settle it. Arizona, they're also talking about it. So the list goes on and on, right? This is a Republican lawyer who is now bouncing around. Same guy who used to work for the Bush people, former Justice Department counsel George W. Bush. There it is, 8/5/2007, Jason Torchinsky. So the Bushes, I think Romney's joining the Bushes as well in doing some fundraising, and they're going to do everything they can to keep Trump out of power. I literally think they would rather have Biden win or a Democrat win than Trump. That's how much they hate the guy. So this is Pencil Neck Schiff. He says this on his Twitter, and he's already warming up his audience for this fight. He says Donald Trump may not be on the presidential ballot. He explains it for us in 30 seconds.
By engaging, Donald Trump is currently the leading candidate for president in the Republican Party, but he may not even make it on the ballot. Let me see if I can break it down. Under the 14th Amendment, if you take the oath of office and then betray that oath by engaging in insurrection or rebellion, you're disqualified from ever holding office again. In Colorado, Republicans have filed suit to keep him off the ballot because he's disqualified. And you can bet if they're successful in Colorado, many other states will also seek to disqualify him from even appearing on the ballot. We'll see how this plays out. Donald Trump is
sick people. They don't want you to vote. They don't want Trump to be on Twitter. They don't want his people to have a voice either. They don't want him even on the ballots. These are the so-called Democrats who so-called believe in democracy. And they don't want you to even participate in democracy by keeping your candidate off the ballot. That's how deranged they are. Now, the question is this even real? Are a lot of people talking about it? Certainly are. Here is ABC explaining.
What I want to ask you about is this. I talk of the 14th Amendment, speaking of Trump. This idea that Trump could be declared ineligible to be president again because he took a part of an insurrection or rebellion against the United States, prohibited by the third clause of the 14th Amendment. Is that a real movement out there? I mean, because this would be each state, I guess, decision.
Yeah, I mean, clearly a lot of people are talking about it right now. I think there's an expectation that this will go at some point all the way up to the Supreme Court, and we'll see how they rule. But I think it's interesting to note that right after January 6th, there was actually a lot of private discussion amongst Democrats on the Hill about the 14th Amendment and whether they could, bar Trump from office that way without a full impeachment. They decided they didn't want to touch that with a 10-foot pole. There was a fear that there would be, blowback, that people would say it would be overly aggressive, and that it would strengthen Trump in the long run. And so I do think that even people who don't like Trump, don't want to see him as president anymore, are fearful of this strategy because they think it could end up, helping him get another term in the White House. And that's why you see people like Mike Pence who are against it, and other Trump critics.
Brad Raffensperger, the Secretary of State.
The 14th Amendment would be different if he gets convicted of something like Georgia or many others. Yeah. But right now, the 14th Amendment was designed for people like Robert E. Lee, who were known insurrectionists.
It was the Confederates. Yeah.
So it's a little different. I mean, it has been tested.
But the Democrats want it. Schiff is very excited about it, telling it to his audience. And Weissmann, even though he kind of agrees that maybe it's up to the voters, it's really not up to the voters. It's up to the people who run the country. They've got an obligation to save America from an insurrectionist.
Andrew, I have to start with you because you have a badge of honor. You were called out by Donald Trump on Truth Social. I'm a little confused by this Colorado case. Walk us through how Trump's legal team is looking at this point.
Well, this is a novel issue because we haven't had this situation with a former president now seeking to be elected who has, by all accounts, colloquially engaged in insurrection. We all sort of watched it and have seen the evidence of that. But there are some very complicated legal issues. And as you noted, Jen, there are legal scholars on both sides. I would note that there are very prominent conservative scholars and judges who have said that it does apply to former President Trump. Obviously, I think this will end up at the Supreme Court to decide the issue. I would agree with your last guest that politically it may be better for the country if people can vote on this and have it not decided on the basis of a provision in the Constitution, but we can't avoid that any more than if it turned out that someone who was 34 years old was running for president, they would be disqualified. They're not qualified under the Constitution. So this really does have to be decided by the Supreme Court about whether he is actually qualified to be the next president of the United States.
So it is going to be an attempt that they are going to use. Even Weissmann, I think, gives two answers there. One answer is yeah, kind of might be a good idea to let the voters do it. But then the MSNBC answer comes out after that. And he's like, but we have to save America from insurrectionists. And so the GOP is in on it. The ex-Bushers are in on it. The Dems are in on it. And so the removal attacks keep going, man. And I honestly think it's just because they are panicked. They are out of gas. They don't know what else to do about it. They've indicted him 4 times. They've gone after him civilly every which way. They faked an insurrection that they still are trying to sell to us. They did eight different January 6 meetings, hearings to try to propagandize the whole thing to all of us. Now they're trying to literally keep their opponent off the ballot. It's like trying to keep your opponent from playing in the game. It's like using a crowbar to take out your ice skating opponent, the legs from her. It's ridiculous what they're up to, but that's what they do. They don't want the voters to even have a say because they know that everything that they've done is such a catastrophic failure. They've got to censor, they've got to cheat, they've got to lie, they've got to steal, and they'll do it. Now, we'll continue to cover, my friends, because they're not going to get away with it. Thank you for joining us and subscribing as we continue to cover. Thank you for liking this video, and we'll look forward to seeing you on the next one. All right, my friends. Well, it is a lovely Friday. We covered some good ground. We've got now the 14th Amendment removal attacks, Hunter Biden's lawyers screaming at Congress, Congress responding in time, Joe Biden busted with the bagman shuffle, and Jack Smith is objecting to Judge Chutkan's recusal request from the Trump team. But now, my friends, it's time to hear from you and to see what you have to say about this over at watchingthewatchers.locals.com. Our friends on YouTube, our friends on Locals. And we appreciate all this incredible support on this amazing Friday. And let's see what we have coming in. Thank you, everybody. Look at this one. Okay, so we've got Gwen. Gwen Cat is coming in as a supporter. And a reminder that we've got our new newsletter on our new website that you can check out, robertgovea.com. If you haven't checked that out yet, certainly encourage you to sign up for that one. We've got Gwen Cat as a supporter coming in. Welcome, Gwen. And don't forget, any new members on YouTube, grab the Telegram link, which is in the community tab section. We'll see you there for the after party. Maddie says, great show. Been watching for months. Thanks, Maddie. I'm awesome you found us. Says, you break down the news in a very understandable way and are always so positive. Thanks, Maddie. I appreciate that. Try to stay positive. I get energized by you guys. I get energized by the fact that we're working on building something better than we're living in and that we're working on improving our society. So I'm energized. I appreciate you being here because it's a very symbiotic relationship. Thanks for joining us. We've got Vienticus says, this is what you get for not eating your bacon vitamins. Your computer equipment crashes. I know. I missed them today. That's the problem. I missed them. MAGA Hat Stays sent this one in. Says, here's the difference between now and the next election. Says, suburban women for Biden, down 12 points. Women, down 11 points. Black voters, down 10 points. Voters under 45, down 7 points. Hispanic, down 5. Same categories. Trump is up majorly. 13 with women, suburban women, 10 with women, 7 with black voters, 6 with voters under 45, and +7 with Hispanic voters for Donald Trump in the House. Tanya Karras is here, says, fill up the swear jar. Thank you for that one. Yeah, when the technology crashes, it's like a slot machine goes off. Cha-ching, cha-ching, cha-ching. Here, this one is from Don't Be Hatin' for Rob's switcher. The switcher literally crashed. Like it's a separate device. Like it's right here. It's a separate device. It's not a computer. It just stopped working in the middle of the show. And I had to reboot the whole dang thing. Gosh, I know. And it's like it's a pretty serious piece of professional equipment. It's not supposed to do that. Golly. And so what I did is I rebooted it and then the computer wonked out, right? The computer couldn't reconnect to it because it wonked out. The ATEM Mini Extreme ISO is the one that I've got from Blackmagic Design. It's not supposed to do that, but it did. Anyways, what can you do? Feds are in my switchers now. C's here. What's up, C? Thank you for the first super chat from our friend C in the house. Says, thanks for the info. God bless you. God bless you back, C. Thank you for being here. And thank you for the very generous dono and for the first one from you here on our channel. Grateful for it. We've got Bird Shadow. says, do you ever listen to Cannibal Corpse? Not really Cannibal Corpse. I used to listen to like Megadeth, and I do like melodic death metal. So like Children of Bodom. I like Norther is a good one. Norther is probably one of my favorites when it comes to death metal, because I like the melodic death metal. So Norther, Children of Bodom, I think were two of my favorites for death metal. And I know Children of Bodom kind of get some grief on this. These are all the Norwegian mellow death bands. Norwegian, I think Norwegian and that area, that part of the world. But not really Cannibal Corpse. It's not as melodic as I like. I mean, I have listened to them though. I like Megadeth for sure, like Megadeth. We've got Ivan LaBerge. Yeah, Viking metal. Huge fan of Viking metal. Ivan LaBerge is a supporter in the house. Welcome aboard, Ivan. Don't forget to grab the private members only Telegram link on YouTube. Glenn Croy is bringing in 5 new members as well. Thanks, Glenn. We've got Old Drill Sergeant coming in. Magic Stick is here. We got Mr. No. We got Mark LaForest and Diana D coming in, courtesy of Glenn Croy. Thanks, Glenn, for bringing in 5 new members. And hey, members, we also do a Saturday morning show, so we'll see you tomorrow morning on Saturday. Patrick Parker says, woohoo, FBI interface. Probably talking about my crashed switcher, Patrick. Is that what it was? Crash says, Rob, the fix is in. Molly is simply voicing her, Jay Chutney, plausible deniability. Yes, I think you're right, Crash. It's really the same thing that we saw the last time. Remember when Molly wrote the last motion? Trump's people wanted a trial in 2026 because well, at the time, there were only 8.5 Washington monuments full of computer paper, like stacked in height. Okay, 8 Washington monuments. And Molly said, well, they don't need to read all of that, Judge, because of sticky notes and highlighters, and it's all organized. And I gave him a roadmap. Remember that? And the judge said, oh, I love highlighters and sticky notes. And so Molly's doing the same thing. She's saying, well, but Judge, like your statements were facts and like they were in a sentencing. And so the judge is going to say, oh, yeah, thanks, Molly. Perfect. And use that as the fake because to justify her opinion. NY says the judge commented on whether Trump had been held accountable for the crime. In her own words, the judge tells us she feels Trump is guilty of crimes. How in the world can we expect to have the appearance of this judge all of a sudden be now impartial? I don't think we can. The problem is the judge is going to have to be the person who makes the decision, reviews that, and then comes to her own conclusion. We got Cindy, thanks, Doc. We got Cindy Banks says the people who were there because 6 states all stopped counting almost in unison as if planned. Some and counts were changing by hundreds of thousands on the TV screen, switching from Trump to Biden. That's absolutely right. I mean, that's absolutely right. That was all over the place. Let me see if I save this video real quick. Yeah, there was a great video that is on that topic, and it was the Fulton County water main break. Did I save that? There was a Fulton County water main break. I'll see if I can find it later. I don't have it right now. All right, so Cindy Banks, thanks for that. Yeah, it was ridiculous. All of it happened simultaneously. Total nonsense. We've got Tony Hay bringing in 5 new members. Thank you, Tony Hay. Look at this. Holy F is coming in. Jeanne Sullivan is here. MAA is coming in. We got Chad S here, along with Audio Wizard. Wow, that's good. Yeah, we could use an Audio Wizard around these parts. Good to see you, Audio Wizard. And thank you, Tony Hay, for bringing in 5 new members. We'll see you guys in the after party. Tara says, H. Biden put his we on P-Hub. Keep your powder dry, kid. Oh, gosh. H. Biden put his we on P-Hub. I'm sure he did. Oh, gosh, that's a terrible thing. We've got this from Tony Hay. Says 5 new members. Another one from Tony Hay. And that's 2 from you, Tony. Thank you. So Samantha R., Captain Safety's here. Chadwick M., welcome. Anonymous is in the house, along with Ralph L707, courtesy of Tony Hay Munkets in the house. John McGarvey says to cover Kurt from Uncivil Laws swear jar. Did Kurt show up and let it rip? Shout out to Kurt. Sometimes you got to let it rip, man. I mean, you got to do what you can. If you're not already following Uncivil Law, right next door. He's right next door on YouTube at Uncivil Law. Take a look at his channel. My understanding is he's doing a great job talking about Paxton trial, which I think they're waiting for a decision on, right? So shout out to Kurt from Uncivil Law. Make sure you're giving them a follow. We've got this one from Glenn, another one from Glenn. Thanks, Glenn. Tom C., Don D., Laura, Richard G., and Southern Comfort, all in the house, courtesy of Glenn Croy. Thank you, Glenn, for the membos in the house. Membos, we'll see you in the after party and tomorrow on the Saturday show. Waldo says, I'd want Hunter's lawyer if I ever got in trouble. Yeah, you know, like he's got a good lawyer. The guy's very aggressive, no doubt, but it's very easy to be aggressive when your dad runs the Department of Justice, right? So he's got like a very unfair advantage. His daddy is the president. So we got to keep that in mind too. Anybody whose daddy is the president is going to have an unfair advantage. Vienticus says, it's not what you know, it's not who you know, it's what you know about who you know. That's funny, V. Sounds like a J. Edgar Hoover quote. Good comment. We've got NY says, Hunter had been skipping taxes for years. His tax issues go back to 2008. He had tax liens on his houses. He's a lawyer. He already had interactions with the IRS. They gave him in 2009 those benefits of the doubt for not filing. All he's done up until being caught is to try to hide his international bribery cash. I agree. He knows what he's doing. They knew what he was doing. He was an international influence peddler who was, you know, cracked out with hookers and all sorts of stuff all the time, just doing these deals for his dad. And all of it was covered up. This isn't like he had no criminal record and they just decided to pick on him for a gun charge. No, this is a minor thing. Here, NY says, by Hunter's crimes passing the statute of limitations, that's de facto immunity. Does his lawyer mention that? No, because the charges have already expired. He can't be charged for those. That was an important part of the cover-up. Looking into those years would have shown how active Hunter and Uncle Joe were in the international scheme. How many people benefit from prosecutors just sitting on their hands deliberately? How many people benefit from prosecutors just sitting on their hands deliberately? Almost nobody, unless you're the president's son. We got this one from John. Says, if I was at J6, I still wouldn't have a court date. That's a statement. That is a statement from John. Member for 14 months. John, thank you for being a member for 14 months. I appreciate you being there. And for that comment, I don't really know what to say about that. I mean, if you were at January 6th, is that because you wouldn't be in the building? Or because your daddy is also the president or something? I'm not sure, John. But this one from Donna says, thanks for all you do, Rob. I learn lots and I find I often have a new way of seeing things. I sit quietly most days, but always here and always learning. Donna Newland, a member for 6 months, which is 2/3 of a baby. And Donna, I think you might have a baby in your photograph. So shout out to your new baby in the house. And I'm glad you're here. And thanks for saying hello. And, you know, I'm mostly the same way. I'm very much a lurker on Twitter, and I like to kind of passively observe and everything, except obviously when we're here, then we're quite active. But I appreciate that. And thanks for saying that you learned something. I try to, you know, balance what we do here, educational, topical, current events, fun, you know, we can laugh together, but we're learning something and we're staying engaged. So I appreciate that feedback. I'm glad. I learned something too. I mean, I literally learned a lot, even just talking about these things and hearing from you. I learned a lot from you. So thanks for that. Appreciate you, Donna. Shout out for being a member for 6 months. Tony Hay says, I've been watching you for a long time, but I freaking love you, man. 38, you're just a kid, but you're so smart, and I appreciate you explaining the law. Tony, man, thank you for that. Yeah, I appreciate that, Tony. I love you back, brother. Thanks for being here, for being supportive, for hanging out with us all the time. And I feel like we're just getting started. You know, I feel like we've got a lot of work to do here together, and we've got a lot of love for this country, and I appreciate the symbiosis that we have here, because couldn't do it without you. So Tony, thanks for that, man. I really appreciate it. We've got this one coming in from the Dr. NY. Says, international bribery rules don't say that Biden had to be directly paid. Family members who were paid count just as much as bribery. I agree. I mean, did anybody catch Donald Trump specifically moving the classified documents out of the White House? Like, did Donald Trump carry a box of classified documents out of the White House? Did anybody see him do that? Then there's no evidence that he took the documents. Okay, right? There's no evidence at all that he even took a single document. Unless there's photographic evidence of it, I would imagine. So even if people saw him, if people said that he did certain things, it's not direct evidence. You need direct evidence, which is Trump putting the document in the box and saying, I know this is classified, but I'm taking it anyways. And then walking out the door with it. That's the only evidence that can count. If we go by their standard, which is obviously insane. Dolphin fan is the man in the house. Thanks, Dolphin. Bringing in 5 new members as well. RJM. We got Mike M. We got Irene A. We got Aubin M coming in. And we've got Eagle 80 all in the house, courtesy of Dolphin fan is the man, bringing in the members. Thank you, Dolphin. Hopefully you're having a beautiful week, my friend. Tony Hay says, out of the whole horrible politicians, the worst thing in America is lying media. It is truly unbelievable, and they never suffer any consequences. No, they don't. And they've got basically a total monopoly on one entire medium, right? And the politicians only go on their mediums for the most part, and they kind of have a stranglehold on the whole conversation. But I think it's fading away fast. I really think that the internet and the things that, you know, the empowerment of individual creators is gonna topple them. And they're scrambling. That you can see it with Twitter. I mean, they're freaked out. That's why they're probably going to indict Elon at some point too, to bring him back into custody. We've got Tony Hay, another one, Tony. Thank you, Tony. Super generous. Bringing in Chuck H, Chris C, Saintly Beginnings. We got F Beghard, Renee C, all invited. Thanks to Tony Hay Munkets on this lovely Friday. Thank you, Tony. And Glenn, another one from Glenn. Thanks, Glenn. This Glenn Croy is bringing in Darren M, Iconic M, Pyramid S, Julia A, and Calbo Dave for membos from Glenn. Thank you, Glenn, for doing that. And new members, we're going to have an after party here in a bit, and we're going to have a Saturday stream, and we'll look forward to seeing you there. NY says, Republicans have to drive home that international standards on bribery chronicle the fact that politicians use family members to hide their bribes. Republicans don't have to show Venmo receipts to Joe. Hunter paid for his expenses and received the bribes. He was like his accountant. Yeah, or Hunter could have just given Joe Biden a credit card in Hunter's name and just said, Dad, just use this credit card. And whatever you put on it, I pay for, right? Stuff like that. And nothing actually changes bank accounts. It's just paid for by somebody else. Ian Mack says court cases, slander, 14th Amendment, every single action these people do smells like desperation. I couldn't agree more. I couldn't agree more. The analogy is the T-1000 liquid metal Terminator machine at the end of Terminator 2, right? When he gets sunken down into the liquid molten metal and he's scrambling around, dying, and Arnold Schwarzenegger saves the day back when he was cooler. Ian Mack, you're right about that. They're scrambling. We got this one also coming in from, where did I go? Lammy, what's up, Lammy? Says non-perfect union is funded by the Soros Foundations. That's incredible. Okay, so non-perfect union was the guy, I got it. That's the guy who's going into the GOP lawyer. Interesting. So Soros is funding the Bush lawyer. Soros is funding the guy who created the organization that hired the Bush lawyer that's going to remove Trump. Isn't that incredible? Thanks for the dig, Lammy. Good stuff. NY says, nobody had guns on January 6th. How ridiculous is the Civil War reference? Fort Sumter, LOL. What was the Summer of Love? The modern Boston Tea Party? Oh, good comment. Yeah, it was the modern Boston Tea Party. According to them, maybe. I'm not sure. It might have been. Yeah. Saving America from racist police officers. Viantikis says, you're wrong, Rob. They want democracy. Democracy means citizen rule. They're the citizens, and you and I are just the mindless servants. Right. They're much smarter than us. We're too stupid to understand things like science and what free speech actually means. And if we get too much free speech, it might hurt us. And so they need to protect us with misinformation rules. Vientikis says, hit that like button, baby. Thanks, V. We've got Pinochet, Helicopter Tours, says, do you think the Supreme Court ethics crusade was a primer to send a message to the justices in an effort to ensure anything Trump is ruled on is done correctly? It's a great question, Pinochet. And it's only speculation, but I think it's probably for something like that. It's to keep leverage, right? The Supreme Court, they need leverage over the Supreme Court because it's the only institution that they don't really control. They control Congress through the Senate and a very, very slim majority in the House. Obviously, they've got the White House. Court, SCOTUS, is 6-3 in favor of the right. And so it's either to keep them in line or it's to delegitimize them such that if there's a really bad ruling that they can say it's illegitimate and use that to their advantage, or it's to delegitimize them so that they could expand the court, right? Or to demand somebody like Clarence Thomas resign right now so that Biden can appoint somebody else while they've got a Democrat senator or something like that. So to remove a justice, to delegitimize the court in the instance of a bad ruling, to create a path to expand the court, or to just keep them in line, like if none of those things work, just to keep them a little bit scared that the media can come back and give them a backhand. Yeah, good question. I think there's a lot that could be there. Tara says, what's up, Tara Rayner says, can someone remind these people that Trump couldn't overthrow his own government? The Demsurrection stopped the elector objections as by design. Yeah, right. Yeah, it wasn't like Mike Pence was going to say, well, I've decided that Trump is the victor now. Thanks, America, for playing. That was never going to happen. It was just, there was even a pause that was being discussed by Ted Cruz until the insurrection happened, that they wanted to happen to stop that further investigation from occurring. We got the good doc says, John Kerry burned his draft card rather violently and declared his rebellion to Congress. He did do that, didn't he? I remember John Kerry, yeah, the Swift boat vets and all that stuff. Remember that? And he said that American troops were like attaching radios to genitals and stuff like that. Yeah. This one came in from our meme smith extraordinaire, Geegum Geegum in the house. Says, here's what I have to say. My new gif, impeach Joe Biden. Impeach Joe Biden. See ya, Joe. Impeach Joe Biden. It reminds me of James and the Giant Peach. Remember that movie? And they're all floating around the ocean. Shout out to Jigam. Impeach Joe. Impeach Joe. I agree with that totally. He should be impeached. Thanks, Jigam. Tony Hay says, can we please get Trump with a red tie? Why do you have a pic of him with a blue tie? Is it a joke? I'm not getting it. Can we please get Trump with a red tie? Why do you have a pic with Trump in a blue tie? Is it a joke I'm not getting? Where's the picture of Trump? Here? This one? That's a red tie. This one's a red tie on the thumbnail. Where's the blue tie, Tony? I'm missing it. I don't know. I'm confused. All right, Tony, hey, Salty Sarge over on Rumble says, great show, Rob. Just when I thought you were the world's youngest boomer, you pulled out your tech degree and made it happen. Party on, Wayne. Gosh, I know. The world's youngest boomer. Well, gosh, I know. All my gear just dumped on me. And this one was the A10 Mini. And that, I don't think that's happened before. That's a new one for us here. It did happen with my other one, my other A10 Mini, but this one's the bigger one. This one's the Extreme. It happened on the regular ISO, but I got the Extreme. Not supposed to do that. But we made it work. We're back in business. We made it work. Thanks for sticking around with us, Salty. Barbs Loves Alaska says, a Michigan jury just acquitted the 3 men who were targeted to execute an FBI-concocted plan to kidnap the Michigan governor. My question is, can these men sue the FBI for doing this to them? I mean, they could, but not really. I mean, the FBI agents are going to have qualified immunity for doing their job. And unless there was something that breaks that, they're not, no. I mean, this is part of the problem. Like, it's a heartbreaking thing. First of all, we talked a little bit about this morning, but yes, shout out to the newly acquitted defendants out of Michigan. The FBI was responsible for the Whitmer hoax, which we talked a lot about when it was actually happening. And it was part of the FBI's text messages that they said, the plan is to kill the governor specifically. And they texted that to everybody else, and they just basically rigged the whole thing, funded by the FBI, all part of the 2020 narrative to try to emphasize this extremism narrative that obviously was never true. So no, I mean, they really can't do much. You can theoretically sue the government, but it's a really difficult thing to do because they protect themselves literally against that. Travis Ropella, what's up? First chat from Travis in the house says, can the DOJ investigate every member of Congress for corruption if Trump is elected to get rid of the rhinos, insider trading, and the bot members? Well, yes, theoretically, yes. I mean, in our new form of government, you can just prosecute kind of whatever you want for whatever you want, right? Fannie just decides, well, RICO. So she can do it. The DOJ, I mean, look, not really, right? I'm being facetious, but Congress, unless they're breaking the law, then the DOJ through the FBI can investigate them. We don't really want government agencies prosecuting each other as a general principle. But since we're in that environment now, where we've got 4 indictments against the man who's running against the man who's in power, it's just like, okay, I guess you can prosecute him for whatever you want now and make up reasons to do it. So maybe we'll see if we get there. The Democrats started it. We'll see. The Antikiss says the new Megadeth album is by far the best one. And I don't know that I could disambiguate them that way. But I might have to get back into some death metal this weekend. We'll have to see. We got Jay Water is here, says, is there a way for all U.S. citizens to vote in accountability for all foreign transactions and donations to and from the government, thus bypassing congressional legislation? Well, the only thing that would come to mind to me on that one would be like a convention of the states, which I believe is 3/4 of the states, which is a lot. So like if 3/4 of the state legislatures wanted to come together and pass legislation that would impact the whole country, they could do that. Now, that would be something that would be difficult to do, obviously. But certainly, we've thought about that. The question is, what happens if you do a convention of the states? What happens if you get a bunch of states that want to just get rid of the Constitution or something? You could theoretically do that, right? We got Salty says, 8 cities in 6 states stopped counting and had a reboot. Trump was up 600,000 in Pennsylvania at midnight, 75,000 up in Georgia. Fox called Arizona for Joe at 9 o'clock, just saying. We were covering it live, Salty. We were live on YouTube back in 2020. We went to bed like, well, that's it. That's the game. All right, everybody, have a good night. Trump won. See you. Woke up the next day, and that was obviously not the reality. So thanks, Salty. And we got this one. One Nation Underground, a member for 2 months. First month's the hardest. If you can make it into 2, we're looking good. I think we have an attributed quote to Zulu. I'm not sure if it's accurate or not, but apparently it says the WEF are heroes and they're saving the planet. I don't know if Zulu actually believes that or not, but Zulu can correct the record, I'm sure. But my friends, thank you for those incredible donos over on Locals, over on Rumble, over on YouTube. Very much appreciated it. And now let's say hello to our friends on X before we go over to our members only after party on Locals and on Telegram. Who's over on the X? Anybody watching us over here? 5 people on a Friday? Normally it's 4, but we've got 5 today. Oh my goodness. Okay, Fred, I'm not going to put that picture up on the screen. I don't care. I'm not going to put it up on the screen. I'm not mad at you. I'm just saying I don't want to see any of Hunter's thigh at all. All right, Danny says, Winston Churchill once said that democracy is the worst form of government except for all of the others that have been tried. Rob, you are one of 2 lawyers I like in the world. Yes, the world. If we got rid of all the other lawyers, it would be utopia. 90% of the problems in the world are caused by lawyers. 90%? You think 90%? That's a lot. We got Raven says, great coverage this week. Thanks, Rob. Have a good weekend. You too, Raven. Thank you for that. And old drill sergeant is also in the house dropping a hello. And so there's also an image of Hunter's thigh on the Twitter account. If you want to read it or look at it, you certainly can. Michael Koster says 20 or more. Wow. That's amazing. And Bernice says, hi, Robert. Thanks for all your efforts and for helping so many of us keep up the fight. Have a wonderful weekend. Thank you for the very nice comment, Bernice. You have yourself a beautiful weekend, too, when you're out there. Silicon Valley Reject is over there. There's a Hunter Biden image from our friend Fred. Says the photo is not a Colt 38. It's another gun. So if you want to go take a look at the close-up of that, certainly go check it out on Twitter, on X. All right, and so that, my friends, is it for us on the day. We are going over to watchingthewatcher.locals.com, and we'd like to see you over there so that we can hang out in our members-only after party, and you can join us there. WatchingTheWatchers.locals.com. YouTube members, join us in the after party at Telegram. Go to the community tab section, navigate down, grab the private Telegram link. We'll see you inside. We've also got our new website, robertgovea.com, where you can join us. Go over there, click this instant access button to get access to the mind map if you want it, but also to the newsletter that gets delivered to your inbox. We send over all of the reports on all of the stories that we cover, and it all delivers right to your inbox. And so we'll be looking forward to seeing you on our newsletter. Now, watchingthewatchers.locals.com is where we're going. Don't forget to get your Field of Greens at fieldofgreens.com, where you can save 15% off with code Robert when you check out. Also, want to say thanks to the mods on the day, our friends Vientikis Prime. Thanks for modding down the fort for us. K Bean in the house. Just Cause. Playin' Hooky, Ronnie Cole, our friend Zulu, Beyond Geo, Zach Nichols, John Allen's in the house, Janek, Dog Digger, Donut Mind Me, and John McGarvey, all in the house. Modding down the fort for us. We appreciate you guys. Thanks for all your help this week. Our Meme Smiths, Jigum Geegum, Sleepy Dog Lee, and Nathan N810, memeing down the fort for us on the day. But that, my friends, is it for us here. We are going over to watchingthewatchers.locals.com. We'd love to see you over there, but if we don't, well, it is the weekend, and I do hope that you have an amazing one ahead. Hopefully you're able to unplug a little bit. The summer is cooling off a little bit. Get outside, get some sunshine, get some movement, get some exercise, lift heavy objects, get the heart pumping, baby. Get some vitamin D out there. Recharge the batteries, whatever it is you're doing. Spend time with your family. Spend time with your loved ones, your friends. Recharge those energy capacitors because, my friends, we're going to be back here next week on Monday, and we're going to do it all again. And we need to see you right back here, ready to go, so that together, with your help, we can shine that big, beautiful spotlight of accountability and transparency down upon our system with the hope of finding justice. Make it a beautiful weekend, my friends. I'll see you right back here on Monday. Bye-bye.